Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
The detective said missing kids usually come home. What happens when they don't?
Based on a true story.
Police looking for John Gacy.
We discovered bodies. By the looks of it, they're younger men.
The things he did to those kids. He's sick.
The system failed these families.
Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Do you know how many there are?
Up to you to find out.
Hello everybody and welcome to 3D Printing Basics. I just wanted to let you know that if you're interested in getting every single episode a week before its release and ad-free, then please head over to my Patreon. The link will be in the show notes, and like I said, you can get every single episode ad-free and a week before its initial release date. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you like this episode. Hello everyone and welcome back to 3D Printing Basics. I'm your host Tyler, and this is episode number 83. In this week's episode, we are going to be going over some calibration tests for your 3D printer. We are going to be talking about why calibration matters, and then we're going to go over some of the commonly used tests used by 3D printers to make sure that their 3D printer is dialed in and ready to go out of the box, or if it just hasn't been used or tested in a while. With that being said, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast. It really means the world to me. I know I say it pretty much every single episode, but I'm going to keep saying it because I truly can't believe how much support I've received from doing this podcast. It truly means the world to me. So thank you guys so much for supporting. And with that being said, let's jump right into today's episode. So let's talk about why calibration matters. Calibration is very important for your 3D printer, especially nowadays with all the self-calibration that 3D printers do. With how fast everything has gotten in the later years with the Bamboo Labs sort of trend of faster and faster printers, calibration has become more and more important. This is because the faster that printers get, the more vibrations you're going to have, the more shaking you're going to have. If you're on an unsteady table, then that's definitely going to add to the shaking. So it's really important that these printers self-calibrate and do things like frequency tests and vibration testing so that they know exactly what to cancel out so that you can ensure good, smooth, high-quality prints for your 3D printer. And so that is probably the biggest reason why calibration matters. It also matters just for printers in general, whether you have it on a wobbly table or on the sturdiest setup that you can possibly have. It still matters for things like accuracy, if you want to get perfectly measured parts coming off your printer every single time, if you want to have sharp corners, good layer adhesion, if you are using a brand new filament that you haven't used before, you can calibrate that. So it's just, there's calibration options for essentially every aspect of your 3D printer, and it's important to do as many as you can, or all of them if you can, just to ensure perfect 3D printing every single time. And without calibrating your printer, even the best slicer settings, they probably won't be able to save your print. You can have those as dialed in as you want, but if your printer isn't calibrated, then chances are it's not going to look as good as it possibly can. So now that we understand why calibration matters, let's jump right into some of the common calibration tests. The number one most common calibration test that I see everywhere, especially the YouTubers who test 3D printers or review 3D printers for a living, they always do the calibration cube. And the calibration cube is very, very simple. It's just a cube. It has X, Y, and Z on it pertaining to the axis that particular surface is printed on, and it's always going to be 20 by 20 by 20 millimeters. And what you do is you print this cube and then you measure it with calipers to see how accurate your 3D printer is printing. If it's a perfect 3D printer and it's nicely calibrated, then you should be able to print this cube and have it measure exactly 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters all the way around. And if it does, then you know exactly that your printer is good. You know that it's going to be printing perfectly measured parts every single time and that you don't need to worry about that. If your cube is off, for example, if you measure 19.5 millimeters or maybe 20.2 millimeters on one side, then that means you might need to calibrate your E-steps, which is on the stepper motors, or adjust your belt tension. So if this calibration test is off, then it usually means that your stepper motors are either skipping steps or they're not dialed in quite as correctly as they should be. And even though it seems like something like, 0.5 millimeters or 0.2 millimeters, it seems like a small amount, but that's just over a 20 millimeter distance. If you're printing, say, a 200 millimeter long part, then that 0.5 millimeters accentuates over the entire distance, and that creates a lot of problems. And it creates a lot of potential for errors, especially if you're running a 3D printing business like I do. It is very, very important that your 3D prints are measured perfectly and that they're coming off your printer accurate and can be trusted. So calibration cube, the number one, probably most common calibration test that I've seen, and it's also very, very important. All right, calibration test number 2 is going to be your temperature tower. This is very good for testing filaments, like brand new filaments that you've gotten that you haven't used before. It's especially helpful for bridging. If you're going to be bridging with a certain filament and you know that, then a temperature tower is definitely going to be something that helps, and it's going to help overall for the surface quality of your prints. So what a temperature tower is it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a tower, and I would say it's different steps, probably about 5 to 10 millimeters tall, and every step it changes the nozzle temperature. It usually starts at 200 degrees, then it goes to 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, so on and so forth. And the temperature tower, like I said, it's really good for brand new filaments that you haven't used before. You can test the ability of it to bridge. You can test the surface quality, what temperature brings out the best surface quality, if there's any kind of fuzz being left or any zits or blobs being left at certain temperatures, if there's poor layer adhesion at certain temperatures. You can just kind of test the overall filament with a temperature tower. So it's a really good if you're getting a brand new filament in that you've never used before and you really want it to look good. A temperature tower is definitely one of the calibration tests that I recommend. It's going to be really helpful for dialing in that filament's settings. Another calibration test that's helpful for filament is a retraction test. And the purpose of the retraction test is going to be, it's going to help tune the retraction distance and speed to help reduce stringing. So the number one thing that this is for, and pretty much the only thing that it's for, is going to be to help reduce stringing on your parts, whether it be just overall stringing from your surface quality not being the best, or from bridging. That's probably the biggest issue there, is if you have your stringing dialed in to where stringing is at a minimum, not only will your bridges look better, but say some parts come loose from the bridging and end up somewhere on the other side of your print. That's not good either, so we just make sure that we run this retraction test and dial that in as much as we can. And so if you have too little retraction, then obviously you're going to have stringy, droopy webs between the two towers. Oh, and I never even explained how it goes. My bad, guys. So the retraction test is going to be two towers straight up with bridges across them. That's all it is. And each step up is going to have a different amount of retraction, whether it go from 0.2 to 0.4 millimeters or 1 to 2 millimeters. And so if you have too little retraction, you're going to be able to see stringy webs between the towers. And if you have too much retraction, you're going to have something like gaps, under extruding, maybe grinding filament. So that is definitely a really good test for your printer and for your filament. I know even some different brands of PLA have different retraction settings. So it's definitely a good thing if you are going to be doing a lot of bridging. If you're going to be trying to print without supports, it's definitely important to run this retraction test to make sure your filament is dialed in so you can have the best quality printing without supports or with bridging. All right, calibration test number 4 is going to be your flow rate or your extrusion multiplier test. And the purpose for this test is going to fine tune how much filament the printer pushes out. And that is going to help for both the accuracy of your prints and the surface quality of your prints. It's definitely going to be super helpful if you have a thin walled or if you're printing in vase mode. So that is definitely going to help if you have those thinner objects, because if your flow rate is off on the single walled or the thin walled objects, then it's going to be really important. And if your flow rate is off, you are going to have some big issues, whether it be over extrusion or under extrusion. You could be skipping layers, you could have blobs or zits all over the place. So it's really important to do a flow rate test to make sure that everything is dialed in there. And so what it is it's basically just a single walled, or it's not a single layer, a single walled print that just goes around and around and around. And each step up is a different level of flow rate or an extrusion multiplier. And you basically just check to see if there's under extrusion, over extrusion, kind of what the nice middle ground is you're looking for essentially the layers that look the best with the least amount of defects, and then that's the flow rate that you're going to want to go with. So flow rate, the extrusion or flow rate multiplier test is definitely something that's very popular among the speed testers. For those of us who know, there's definitely a community of people out there who are trying to build the fastest printer imaginable, and this is a big test that they use, because when you're printing as fast as these people are trying to go, then flow rate is arguably the most important factor. If you just aren't getting the filament out fast enough, then it doesn't matter how fast your print head is moving. If it's under extruding, it's just not going to work. All right, the final calibration test that I want to talk about is going to be the bed leveling / first layer test. And this is something that I think everybody should do as soon as you get your first printer, as soon as you get your printer unboxed. It's going to be super important that you at least test the first layer just to make sure there's nothing crazy wrong going on. Usually with the new printers that come out nowadays, they have really good first layer / self leveling. So you're almost always going to get a good first layer out of the box, but you want to make sure that you just test it, make sure it's all good, and then you don't have to worry about it. So that is definitely something that I will do on every single one of my new printers that I get. I always do the first layer test, and what that essentially is just one single layer high. It's just a square printed over the entire length, as much as the bed as it can cover. And this tests to make sure that the first layer not only is level and is calibrated and is printing good, it also checks to make sure that the bed itself is flat. If you have some areas that are too high and some areas that are too low, then you might want to check with the manufacturer, because that would mean that the print bed itself is not level, and that's going to create some problems, because no amount of calibrating is going to be able to offset the unevenness of the bed, especially if you're just doing a first layer test out of the box and you're already seeing some pretty noticeable issues. So that's definitely something to look out for. But yeah, the bed leveling / first layer test is something I recommend everybody do, just to make sure that everything is in good working order and your printer is going to be good out of the box. And those are kind of the different calibration tests that I like to run. Usually I'll wait 6 months, maybe a year for some other printers. Maybe for my Bamboo Labs printers, I usually wait like a year, and then I kind of do all these tests at once. And it just helps to make sure that the printer is still running good over time, that my maintenance is doing good, and that the printer itself is holding up. So these are definitely some things that you can try out of the box, but definitely something to keep trying and make sure you keep doing it over time to make sure your printer is still printing as good as it did out of the box. So that's definitely something to consider. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and learned a little something about calibration tests and how they can help your printer and why I think they're necessary. Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, I appreciate all the support. Feel free to head to my Patreon if you want to get these episodes a week early and ad-free, as well as supporting me. It would really mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time.